Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now I was pretty happy with this £18 purchase of the once sweet spot 6th gen i5 6500. This chip sat between the lower clocked i5 6400 and 6600 in terms of price and performance back in 2015, and considering its once solid status as a decent gaming option, I thought it would make the perfect upgrade for the socket 1151 Lenovo pre-built I picked up a few weeks ago. Well, it was sort of a Lenovo. The innards had been stuffed into an aftermarket case, and while I admired the effort, the included i3-6098P made for some pretty horrible gaming benchmarks. Thanks to the proprietary power connector, I had to use an adapter in order to add my own PSU and graphics card, and despite a lot of you telling me this was perfectly safe, I was a bit skeptical. In fact, I hadn't been as sceptical of any statement since the local chainsaw-wielding tree surgeon told me that he lost his thumbs in an unrelated accident. Yeah, okay. Granted, this adapter did and does still work fine, even though I'm a bit nervous every time I fire up the PC. After slapping the i5 in the system and adding an RTX 3060 Ti along with 16 gigs of DDR4, I was ready to see how well this processor held up. This setup isn't capable of bringing out the best of the i5 because we are limited to 2133MHz RAM, which is the fastest by default anyway, according to Intel, though a better board would help out with this. But if your budget allowed for that, you'd probably be looking at a faster CPU both 7 years ago and today. Furthermore, I can't see the point in spending extra on a better board with XMP support only to find yourself limited by the 4 physical cores and lack of hyper-threading. It is an upgrade from the dual-core i3, don't get me wrong, but I find it difficult to recommend any i5 from before the 8th generation for modern gaming, you know, the generation when Intel finally introduced 6-core options, and then hyper-threading with the 10th gen lineup. If you're playing slightly older or less demanding games, then you might be okay. Battlefield 5 multiplayer is a very processor intensive game, and it's not uncommon to see 100% utilization. Well, it's more uncommon to see less than 90% utilization actually, but the percentile lows actually remained okay, which is surprising but welcome. Different maps may vary, but my couple of hours of game testing here proved to be mostly positive with this aging chip. I don't think we've actually tested 6th or 7th gen CPUs here on the channel before, despite the fact I wanted an i5 6400 back in the day. The 6500 has a 500MHz high base clock though, so I should have wanted for that instead. Despite the slower RAM speeds that we're limited to here, I don't think faster DDR4 would help out all that much with such a big CPU bottleneck. This is clearer to see in titles like Cyberpunk, which performs well in emptier and less populated areas, but comes crawling to a near halt as we make our way further into Night City. Turning the crowd density down to low, as I've done here, does help, as that is a CPU intensive setting, but it's not enough to combat some of the seriously off-putting dips and drops. 4 cores with no hyper-threading is not ideal in 2022. It's a similar story in Forza Horizon 5, which plays okay when driving solo through the beautiful Mexican landscapes, but becomes borderline unplayable during races. There were no instances where the game froze and gave me a streaming issue message like when we tested the older i5 4460 not long ago, but I guess architectural improvements has helped us out ever so slightly here. The game won't freeze, but it does come close, and capping the frame rate to 30 is the only way I can think of to try and alleviate some of the stutter. Higher resolutions like 1440p won't help either, because while the load is increased for the graphics card, the CPU is still being pushed to its limit. That goes for every game I tried. Elden Ring opened and ran for a bit, but it crashed shortly afterwards. The initial 10 seconds of gameplay pretty much told me all I needed to know, and it wasn't good. Having fun in SpiderMan wasn't impossible, and the frame dips and drops mostly occurred when closer to the ground or actually walking amongst the many NPCs littering the city streets. Now, while I wouldn't recommend an i5 6500 or any 6th gen i5 really these days, I definitely would have to insist that you certainly don't buy a card like the 3060 Ti to pair with it if you have one already. Prioritise upgrading your processor before going graphics card shopping. As I said before, you could potentially gain a few frames from faster RAM, but the core count is the biggest issue. And this, in combination with our motherboard's limited or non-existent memory tweaking options, makes for a not so great gaming experience overall. Let's finalise with Red Dead Redemption 2 then, which I've always said will run on 4 strong cores and not much else. That seems to be the case here too, because the 1 and 0.1% lows really weren't that bad, even when causing carnage in and around Valentine. The fact that our graphics card doesn't really exhibit a higher than 40% utilisation figure tells you all you need to know, and all I can say is that I wouldn't mind a 6th generation Core i7 in this system right about now. But there we go, this isn't really a full review of the i5-6500 in 2022, nor is it really a Lenovo upgrade video. That said, I can't suggest a 6th gen i5 in 2022 based on the findings I've seen so far, although the 6600K, an overclocked one with faster memory on a better board, would give you the best experience. It probably still won't be a solidly smooth experience these days, but it will be better than what you've seen here today. Thank you very much for watching then. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.